I'm Jim Collison and live from Gallup Studios here in Omaha, Nebraska. This is Gallup's Strengths Explorer series recorded on January 17th, 2019. Strengths Explorer is a podcast series that dives deep into the 10 talent themes of the Clifton Youth Strengths Explorer, designed for adults who are interested in accepting, affirming, and growing the individual potential within a child. This series expands your language to describe what is right and strong with children ages 10 to 14. To further your understanding, check out Gallup's book, Strength-Based Parenting, available wherever books are sold, or you can start right at shop.gallup.com. Don't forget to visit the Gallup Strengths Center, just gallupstrengthscenter.com, for all your Clifton Strengths coaching resources and training needs. You can also catch this video and both streaming and downloadable audio for offline listening. We call that podcasting, available for you. And this series actually will get a new podcast, so there'll be some instructions as you listen along on how to get that done here towards the end. But you can catch all of our resources. They're available off our coach's blog, coaching.gallup.com, or email us, coaching@gallup.com. Micah Liebert is our host today. She's a workplace consultant here at Gallup. Micah, always great to see you, and welcome to the new Strengths Explorer series.
Thanks, Jim. You crushed that intro. Well done.
Listen, I don't get nervous very often, but I have been nervous for this series. I think it's because it's so important, and what we're talking about, the aspect of children's development is so key and so important at the age group that we're talking about. And so I just am excited that we get it right. And so you and I have spent a ton of time talking about this series over the last 6-7 weeks, as we've been together for a whole week last week to kind of talk about it. It was a retreat, but I swear we did it just so we could talk about this series. We have a great guest. So Micah, why don't we dive in?
Yeah, so let's start. We get to interview probably Gallup's certainly leading expert on children and talent today. But before we do that, Jim, on that note, let's just talk a little bit about why we're even doing this. So if you've watched Theme Thursday, you've seen Jim and I interact before, and you know there's a couple things that are true about us. One is that we're both parents at totally different ends of that spectrum. One, I'm a mom and he's a dad, not of the same kids. But two, mine are little and his are grown. And another thing you might know about us is that we like to partner and make decisions by throwing a bunch of stuff at the wall and not holding each other accountable for what sticks until it comes up over and over again. And Jim, is it fair to say this is one of those things that just kept coming up that we couldn't ignore? We couldn't.
It's come up in the community. It's come up just as we've been working the last 4 years on this concept of Strengths Explorer and what we're doing has come up. And so we just couldn't ignore it any longer. It was kind of like, we need to get some material out there. And you and I, like I said, we spent 6 or 7 weeks really kind of grinding over this just to see where we'd go with it.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Where do you hope we do go with it?
Well, I hope folks come out with a fundamental understanding of kind of when we think about parenting and when we think about how we can point these themes at it, that coaches and parents come up with a fundamental understanding of how to get started and how to kind of do this. And so there's some myths out there. There's some misunderstandings. I think there's some areas that need to be encouraged. So I really feel strongly that I think through the next 12 of these sessions, especially starting today, I think we can really hammer it and get folks kind of right on the right path.
What can people expect? Say people who've listened to Theme Thursday, where our mission really is to go through all 34 of the CliftonStrengths themes, and started by what Kurt Liesfeld did. It was, how do we make this language common? I think that's a good baseline for a goal. How do you think that translates to what we're trying to do here with Strengths Explorer?
Yeah, I think with the themes and with adults, we can get pretty prescriptive and pretty pinpoint accurate. I think as we think about this age, 10 to 14, there's going to be a lot of fuzzy gray, and it's not so accurate or exact on the themes, more on how we focus on the individual young adults, this area. And so less around, I think, kind of lists of things and more around understandings of things. And so I'm excited to kind of flesh that out.
Fantastic. Cool. Well, today we get to be joined not only by probably the person other than maybe Mary Reckmeyer, the person who has spent the most time at Gallup with kids, about kids, or on behalf of kids and their strengths. It's also somebody who really was here when we were developing StrengthsExplorer. And before that, when we had something called Youth Perceiver, that was the early 80-question assessment that identified the strongest patterns in young people. Not only does she have all of that to her name, she's also my best friend at work, in addition to Jim Carlson. In fact, we got to have a great internal retreat last week, and I was probably accused of being a little bit exclusive because both of these people were in my space, and it was just like my heart was going to explode in the best way possible. But one thing specific to her is even before I had children, Jerlene was able to talk to me in a way that I just knew she sees children as whole human beings. The way she talks about her own kid, the way she talks about mine, the way she interacts with all of them. Kids, if you haven't noticed this, have a pretty great radar for who gets them and who doesn't. And every kid I've ever seen interact with Jerlene knows that she's one who gets it. So Jerlene Mosley, welcome to the program.
Oh, thank you, Micah. What a pleasure. Oh my gosh, this will be awesome.
Jerlene, can you just tell us, kind of as our kickoff expert around StrengthsExplorer, where did this come from? What was the original idea behind StrengthsExplorer?
Yes, absolutely. For a long time, our mission has been to help people know more about who they are rather than who they're not. And so we always wanted to do that with a younger population. The challenge was, how do we ask about that? In the early iterations of this assessment, we tried out having kids look at pictures, a couple pictures, and pick the one that was most like them. And while that was fascinating, it wasn't always predictive of their patterns. If I have two pictures to choose from, I might choose the one with the dog in it because I want a dog. Mm-hmm. And so we tried pictures and text, and then we really landed on what really sorted were these statements, the 78 statements in StrengthsExplorer that kids can choose their agreement about. And that seemed to work the best to hone in on areas of potential. And so, we were curious about, we tried all the StrengthsFinder themes. We tried out, I come from a music background, so I can use a lot of verbs that have to do with auditions. We tried out a lot of patterns from our Youth Perceiver, all 34 of the StrengthsFinder themes, to really figure out what would sort. And what I love about the 10 patterns on StrengthsExplorer is that they're very versatile, and it really gives us a place to start. We are a research company, and Jim, I appreciate what you said about, this tool. So it's not as refined, not as defined, but we do want to be objective. And so we did, really study and work hard to figure out what could we measure in young people ages 10 to 14. And then obviously at Gallup, anything we ask about has to be actionable. So once we ask it, what can kids do about that? What can we as caring adults who surround kids do about that?
Jerlene, just to follow on that a little bit, because you're a great teacher and I think you really get this, but when you say we wanted things that would sort, what does that mean?
You know what, that just means that we would look through a lot of potential patterns to ask about. And so I remember as we met as a team about developing StrengthsExplorer, we were really curious about what would come through in the assessment. We didn't start out saying we need this many themes or it needs to represent this many domains. It was really about what can we identify in students that will define and potentially predict their success.
Love that. That's super helpful. I have been thinking a lot about what's, the goal with any of this. And you mentioned actionable being one of them. I think with adults, we can easily tie the connection between engagement and or strengths and engagement and then performance, that perhaps the reason for adults to focus on strengths is that per person productivity piece. You're really, really getting at the ability to say, here's where I can be excellent. And here's where my colleagues, my clients, my boss can expect more of me. What's the goal when you're looking at kids? Is it performance driven? Is it engagement? Is it something else?
I would say yes to all of that. I think we have seen that some of our school partners that have really honed in with goals about personalized learning plans. We can ask them in our student engagement surveys, every day I get to do what I do best. Mm-hmm. And so I think StrengthsExplorer accelerates how young people can know themselves, some of their areas of excellence. And then it helps, I think, accelerate that relationship and really just tunes everybody into where they can excel, what's their pathway. Anecdotally, I often say that I think this identifies places where kids can get A's that maybe aren't on an existing report card. I think there are things that we honor in 40-year-olds, being futuristic, being a visionary, that 11-year-olds are practicing right now. So how do we know what that is and how to celebrate it?
That's going to be the subtitle when we're editing this. Where can you get A's that isn't on a report card? That's awesome. So I appreciate hearing where StrengthsExplorer came from, and that it's not just a guess, right? It's not just a bunch of people sitting around saying this is how you could be. What are some of the wins that you've seen with StrengthsExplorer? Where do you feel like it's really gone?
Oh, golly, that's a great question. I love thinking about that every day. I think it has served as a common language for every sixth grader in a district where they come in one particular school district. Each child takes it before their outdoor education overnight that they do in the fall. So it becomes this unique identifier that they can work with as they are on a ropes course and doing some things outside. And then it becomes the way they do business with each other. I love that in this same set of schools that a young person's top 3 is what greets them the next year when they go to their middle school. So I wish I could go back to my 7th grade and walk into my homeroom and have a name tag that has my name in top 3. I really appreciate how that sends a welcoming message about we are expecting you and your talent. So on a big scale, I think we've seen our school partners use this as additional ways that students can know more about themselves, describe themselves in student-led parent-teacher conferences. And it also works well in one-on-ones. So there's a middle school principal I know that when she gets to spend time with kids that may have had some challenges in particular classes that day, one of her strategies is to talk with them about how they can use one of their strengths to kind of get back on track, to refocus. I think it's been part of awesome parent-teacher conferences. Recently, I heard about a confirmation group where every 8th grader in this group of 35 8th graders studying confirmation practices at their church could name where they excel and how their gifts contribute to that. So in unique singular ways and giant collective ways, I think it celebrates who kids are with a lot of resource and data behind it too.
Julian, we used to do family camps here at Gallup, and I shouldn't say used to. We still do from time to time. And my oldest took this when he was younger, and we began to see these responsibility themes begin for him to be very high, and it actually changed the way we gave him opportunities at the house. We knew that we could put him in charge, and that he would do the right thing. And so we just gave him more and more of those kinds of opportunities way earlier than I think we probably would have, because we had these clues. Didn't mean we just turned over the car keys, right? So we began to test some of those. But I appreciate you saying in schools or in parenting, as we think about having those early indicators to be able to steer them into opportunities to be successful, kind of based on what they're good at. And so I knew if we asked him to do something, he'd always do it. If he said he was going to do it, he'd do it. And so it was a great clue for me as a parent. It was a great clue as we began to see these things, start to work out in our children, of what you just said, which is these early indicators of areas we could give them an opportunity to be successful in. Micah, sorry to interrupt, but I just throw that in.
I just think, what I've experienced with it is there's almost, in the adult side of things, we talk about themes are neutral, and sometimes it's easy for that to be, here's what's wrong with me. In my experience, I don't know how this has happened, but when we use StrengthsExplorer with children, it seems like there's so much more of a general agreement that it's talking about what's right. And Julian, I do know that there is a lot of fear in some places that if I've got 3 themes that follow me from, let's say, from 6th to 7th grade, does that mean that I've been put into a bucket? Does that mean I've been labeled and it's somehow going to limit my development? How do you respond to that?
You know what? I think what we've seen so far is it really expands the vocabulary. I think that it enlarges the acceptance we have about these patterns. And then I think always it includes asking. Great strengths practice isn't me lecturing my fifth grader about how I think they should operate these themes. It's me asking, watching, listening, wondering. We're all a work in progress, but especially kiddos, 10 to 14 are. And so I think it affirms who they are. We can build on that. And it starts with acceptance. We really accept that. This weekend, I'll be watching my 20-year-old compete with her college team. And I will be watching patterns that I've known about her since age 3. Now, I didn't always know what to call it. And there's an autonomy and independence, a competitive streak that will serve her well this weekend. And it was very much evident in her first 24 months of life. So I think it really does give us this language, this vocabulary. I can't wait for your audience to have time with Dr. Mary Ruckmeyer, and that book, Strengths-Based Parenting, has really been like my guide all through my daughter's growing up years, because it just keeps me reminded that I shouldn't lay my top 5 lanyard around her neck and to really understand that this creature that I love more than anybody else in the world is wired pretty differently. And I am in awe of that. And yet, how do I keep providing this pathway and lanes to go on in that? And sometimes you got to remind people where the lanes are. That's part of growing up, but it's always being aware that, she's her. At one point she said, "Mom, you just do you and I'll do me." And I thought, oh my gosh, that's a message I preached the world over many, many years. And so to hear it back from my 17-year-old was fascinating, but it was a good lesson.
Oh, that's great. Julian, can you tell us a little bit about the tool itself? What can adults who are using this expect?
Absolutely. Thank you. First of all, it's concise. It's meant to be efficient. It takes about 10 minutes on the average to administer. It is 78 items. It is not timed. And so that's a big difference between CliftonStrengths and StrengthsExplorer. It was designed for that 10 to 14-year-old age group. I think we've really vetted all of the questions, made sure they were, easy to understand, all of that. From that, kiddos will get their top 3. The report is magnificent. It has so many resources in it, paragraphs where students can then highlight and select their favorite sentences. There are action items written directly for the student as well as for caring adults. So, one of the things I really appreciate is that even in this resource, we talk about their talent, their potential, and that building their talent is like flexing a muscle. How can we help them practice that more? So I think there are 3, and what I found so far with thousands and thousands of kids is I think it affirms who they are. It might surprise them that this is seen as a talent because we're really describing things both external and internal.
That's great. David in the chat group has a great question that might fit right here. He says, I recall middle school as an awkward time. Could Jerlene provide a story or 2 of how she's seen students embrace each other's talents?
Oh, absolutely. Thank you, David, for that great question. I think it levels the playing field. When I've seen groups of middle schoolers get in a discussion about this, have it be part of their daily practice, in many classrooms, they answer a question every day. They just do work every day that has to do with their top 3 and how they're using it. So I like the mutuality about that. I like how it equalizes. I also think in these classroom communities that it helps them know how to lean into each other. In one classroom, one student said to his teacher, he said, "Oh my gosh, you need an organizer. That's one of the 10 themes." And so they did a call out for organizers to come and help Mrs. Sullivan with her bookcase because it needed some work. And so as we go back to our research about, how do we pay attention to the best in each other? And so many times this is tied together with our research and resources about bucket filling and how full is your bucket and recognition. And I think that this language can give 7th or 8th graders which don't always talk to each other, an objectivity about their language. I was just telling one of my friends who's coming into the middle school realm to not be surprised if your carpool gets out of their car at middle school and doesn't talk to each other as they go into the middle school, even when they've been laughing along the way. But somehow when you enter that middle school zone, it can seem like there are different rules. And so I think this language, this objectivity gives young people a chance to know themselves and know each other better.
Great. And certainly a lot of that comes from how we present it as adults, right? I just remember, and I've worked a lot with middle schoolers, but I remember being a middle schooler where you're really just, I mean, Jim was talking in the pre-show about being 12 and realizing that that was the time he was a real person. Along with that, it's also a time when you're starting to figure out what's good look like. How do I, what kind of benchmarks are worthy of me, accomplishing, and recognition is an important part of how we develop as human beings. What gets recognized, what gets appreciated. When we do this right, we've got 10 different things that are all good. And so part of it is, how do you help foster that kind of collaborative recognition left and right amongst students, rather than just telling them sort of one directional?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think it calls to mind organizer. You'll have a whole episode about that. And that is really the theme, where young people love to set things in motion. They love to arrange, to orchestrate, to plan. Now, I think for some eighth graders, that might be about friends. It also might be that I, as an eighth grader, plan out my outfits on Sunday night, and that my precision, my organization is about my hair and clothing. So there's just so many different ways this can play out, and that's going to be fun to unpack throughout this series.
Jerlene, there's a lot of questions in the chat about how do we make sure that we get this right from an adult side of things. So what can you tell us in terms of best things to tell parents or adults ahead of time? Any sort of advice around how they can help students take it? Should they leave the room and not be there? And then talk a little bit about also, what do they get with a report that might help adults help children?
Yes, absolutely. I would say the first essential rule would be not to lean in or contribute anything when your young person is taking StrengthsExplorer. Okay. Let them take it. Yeah, I think leaving the room would be fine. I think we've set this up for them, for this to be them. In that way, once the report comes, then I think it's about asking. One of the great pieces about the StrengthsExplorer resources available is that there is a parent guide that also has great questions and strategies about that. My favorite centerpiece of this work is the 11-page report that comes with StrengthsExplorer it's a great strength story. So I think it can be an ongoing story that parents use, study, reflect on, ask about, and really just, I think, hone in on asking their young person about that, related to their top 3. You don't have to know all 10. And this really, really isn't about trying to figure out why your kid isn't one of the ones you thought they should be. Okay. That's why the report will only be about the top 3. We never work with ranking the whole top 10. We have more than enough to work with when we have a young person's top 3 and setting them up for success every day about that. So hone in there.
Great. Maureen in the chat says, she tries to tell parents not to push their child in one direction or another, even if you might disagree with where they're identifying. Is that best practice, or what sort of things do parents need to know?
I think so. I think so too. I think it's being a student, having a lens on, asking them, but also I think it opens up about how you and your child's educators might see these and invest in them and wonder and be curious. Sometimes when we want to be crabby, let's be curious instead. There's just more to find out about that. Jim, some of my favorite features of the family camp that you spoke about is, there's so many different themes happening in a family. And sometimes it's easy to think that when someone reacts a different way, even if they share our last name, that they're trying to be anti-us. When they're really not anti-us, they're just bringing a different pathway, a different lens, a different solution, a different approach to how we look at the living room. And so, for every job, there's somebody that loves to do it. And I think that this opens up some additional ways young people view jobs and how they might go about that.
Oh, that's great. I think, Jerlene, what I'm hearing from you right now is it's not just about how do you take the assessment. it's also about what do we need to be better at as developers of kids, So I think there's a lot of fear about jumping in and having your kid take this assessment, and sometimes it's that fear that I'm somehow going to do it wrong. It's almost like I take my kid to the doctor to make sure that they take their temperature and their measurements because I don't want to get it wrong. But if we acknowledge that fear and then choose courage instead, a little bit of it is realizing that this entire journey isn't just about taking the assessment. It's how do you continually notice things in them every single day that are good, instead of trying to use those benchmarks of what to fix based on things that are wrong.
Absolutely. My favorite line in Dr. Reckmeyer's book is, "What's best for the child is what's in the child." And when I have that ahead of us, I think it really helps us. It is knowing more about their talent, their potential. I think it's also about interests. What do you spot and know about where kids are interested? And that we're in this growing learning stage, that it's still kind of a work in progress about that. So, I think that's why that, we didn't build StrengthsExplorer to predict StrengthsFinder. Is there some alignment? Absolutely. But I would say the biggest thing is to let this live where it lives, honor these three, and really ask their top three, and then ask more about that in terms of this child.
So that's important because we're going to want to do it in a second. Say, how do these map to Clifton I think it's you've said very clearly this did not start from CliftonStrengths and then say let's expend that same research to equal a kid version. Is there any validity or usefulness in being able to map one assessment to the other?
You know what? I think we will explore some pathways that might be connected in terms of that, always being aware about here's what these could be. And yet I think that at 10 to 14, and then we use these 10 themes as language for strength spotting in the strengths-based parenting book. So I appreciate that it gives us more vocabulary, more language, more awareness about who could they be, what might this turn into. So there's a lot of openness about that too. A lot of, 10 isn't very many words. It really isn't. So that's why we can start with that, and then we expand to what part of this does the student own. That's why one of my favorite pieces and one of the first steps of debriefing after a young person gets their report is to have them to go through it and share what's their favorite sentence and about that. And then we ask more about that. So it just starts us on a pathway that comes from the student in the first place.
I think when we're trying to map CliftonStrengths back to StrengthsExplorer, the time that it might be worthwhile is in that context of a family, being able to say, here's who I am as an adult, and here's how that relates to you as a child, not here's what you're destined to turn into when you take the next assessment.
Exactly. And I think about, the three of us, if we, when we all landed in Omaha last week and hundreds of our colleagues did, we all took different pathways there. So when you think about a goal as a family, what are the different pathways that each person takes? The 10-year-old, the 14-year-old, the 52-year-old. And so I think if we, you can take a lot of different roadways to get to a destination, and here's some more descriptors about what that particular roadway looks like. Might it be a highway that goes along my interstate? Sure. But I shouldn't try to make it that if it's not that.
Jerlene, I know you need to catch a flight to see your awesome 20-year-old. So we're going to let you go. And then Jim and I will cover just a little bit about the strengths-based parenting book. But what would you like to leave us with? Any guiding principles that we need to make sure and get right?
I really like thinking about acceptance, affirmation, and growing. Accept, affirm, and grow. I think those are really good directions in this process, both in individual conversations and thinking about this for a community of young people. And I would just kind of sign off with that statement again about what's best for the child is what's in the child. So thanks both of you, and thanks our audience. I so appreciate how you want to help kids grow and learn and be the best they can be. So it's been an honor to be with y'all today. Thank you.
Thanks, Jerlene.
Jerlene, thanks for joining us. There's on your screen there, if you take your mouse and go up to the top of the screen, there'll be a little red hang up button, and we'll have you hang up. That way we have safe travels.
Okay, thank you.
And we'll call you often with questions that we have, I'm sure.
Sounds great. I can't wait. Thanks, guys.
Right, thanks. Have a safe trip. Micah, when we think about, Maureen was asking in the chat room a little bit earlier, when we think about instructions, just practically speaking, when we think about giving, how do we advise people and parents? I was scrolling through our StrengthsExplorer site. So if you go to StrengthsExplorer.com, that'll redirect to the Gallup Strength Center. And there's kind of a walkthrough that kind of walks individuals through for educators, for parents. Here's some things. Any other things that you know of that we have as far as materials of coaches are thinking about, hey, I want to get the folks I'm coaching involved in this. I know there's some instructions in the book as well. What else?
I want to say something that people have told me. I have a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old, and I've heard this a lot and never let it be internalized. But I want to say the exact same thing, which is kids are resilient. You're not going to break them. You don't have to be afraid of doing something wrong with this, because it really is going to identify what's great, and it's going to do it in a really great kid-friendly language. So don't be too afraid of it, I think, is the first piece. The other thing I would say, and full transparency, I didn't do this until 2 days ago. Read this book first. Let me show you. Okay, so if you're on video, I'll show you. If you're not, if you're just on audio, I'll describe it. This is the book called Strengths-Based Parenting from Gallup. Dr. Mary Reckmeyer wrote it with help from Jennifer Robison. And the first, I don't know, this is like half an inch of pages, if that, is really the book that I think you should read first. 89 pages. And then that's the gist of what is bigger than the assessment. What's the entire journey? What do we all need to agree with? And we'll talk in a moment about what those bullet points are. The rest of the book, and if you're on audio only, it's about an inch of content, printed. You've got information about all 34 CliftonStrengths themes, what to do if you have them yourself, and what to do if your kid has them, similar to how StrengthsFinder 2.0 was written in terms of managers and individual contributors. Then the last is where we talk about the StrengthsExplorer themes. And so it really is meant to be a companion guide, if you will. It also comes with one StrengthsExplorer code and one CliftonStrengths code in the book. So before you have your kid take the assessment, I think you've done your due diligence if you just read the intro, at least, if not the first 89 pages. I did that yesterday with my highlighter, and there's a couple things that I took out of it. I would love to hear after you read it what you take out of it. But essentially, it's helping us understand there's no right or wrong way to raise a child, but there are ways to do it that are going to bring you less stress and more joy. A couple other key points. There's so much that's right within a kid, but often that isn't at the front of our investment in them. And I think so often people helping us raise kids, our teachers, their doctors, parents, we focus the bulk of our energy on what's wrong or what needs to be made right, because childhood goes so quickly. And it feels like any human, like we've got to get this stuff right so that we can move on, where maybe our pillars, maybe our sort of goalposts could be starting from being able to identify what's right, and making sure that we admit, just like we do with adults, that there is an endless runway of information of being able to learn what works when things work. There's a lot, I think, if you can just make your first step be to commit to reading the first part of that book and understanding what the framework is, then you'll be a lot less afraid of the assessment itself. And there are some great helpers. Remember, another difference between this and CliftonStrengths is how much supporting material comes post-assessment. So you've got a parent and teacher resource guide that comes along with your kid's top 3. So you don't need to be afraid of, I think, even giving it to the people that you're coaching, giving it to your clients, and trusting that they can run with it and still do a good job.
I think one of the tendencies we have sometimes is to be so prescriptive at this and say, like parents, like, just tell me how to be a great parent. And they'll read a book like Strength-Based Parenting, and it won't tell them how. Like, it's not a how-to book. It's not do this, do that. It's here are some things. Now engage your brain in this process and get involved, get to know. There's some things there's some prescriptive things to look for, to watch for, to see. There's this tool. I would say, a lot of cases, Maureen was kind of thinking, like, maybe a lot of people, like, can I get a 1-pager that, well, it may be a little more complicated than that. And this may be one of those conversations where you get more engaged in the process as opposed to just take this and things will happen. Yeah. The book is a good manual. Micah, as I was reading it again, I read it when it first came out. I was reading it again to prepare for this. I just realized, sometimes in the strengths community and a lot of our coaches and enthusiasts and champions, we sometimes get a little bit numb to the realization that we've got this great discovery available to us, both with CliftonStrengths and StrengthsExplorer. And we begin to forget how a lot of the world has never seen this before. Don't be in too much of a hurry to get them there. Let them work through that process. I mentioned a story to you. When I came to Strengths 14 years ago, it was because I found a book at work called First Break All the Rules. And when I read that book, I was like, holy moly, I want to be managed this way. And then, of course, Now Discover Your Strengths led right to that. And I remember that was a discovery I came to. It took time. Mm-hmm. And so, especially in this area of parenting, I don't know if this is a turn and burn where it's a quick, hey, you should try this thing for parenting. I really do think this is an opportunity to develop. And we're going to spend 14 weeks, or 12 weeks, sorry. We're going to spend 12 weeks on, maybe I want it to be 14 weeks. We're going to spend at least 12 weeks as we work through this series. I give them some time, get them involved and give them the book, talk to them about it, reflect on it. Don't be too much of a hurry to just be like, do this, get it in, get it done. I think this is a real process. For me, it took us 20 years of parenting to figure some of it. We're still figuring out our kids.
I think a lot of it too, come back to what Jerlene said, it's about listening. It's about your practice every day outside of an assessment, outside of a computer. Did you spend, when you lay down and you're exhausted, or maybe like last night in my world, punishment and discipline meant that my kids all had to go to bed earlier than normal. And we just sort of sat there numb to the whole day. If you can spend 5 brain, tiny little megabytes or, 10 seconds thinking, did I ask my kid about how they saw the world today? Did I listen to what they noticed? Did I let that be different than what I filtered? Did I offer some recognition about something that was positive? And I think maybe we'll develop our own language around what that 5-second right before you fall asleep checklist could be. But so much of this is about realizing I love what Jerlene said, if what's best for the kid isn't prescriptive and it isn't in a book, it's what's within the kid. And our effort around this is so much bigger than getting them to take an assessment. Our effort is getting to that point where we change a lot of our own behavior. We get better at listening, at affirming, and at helping kids grow.
Yeah, the assessment is great. Don't get me wrong. But you can begin, much like we do sometimes, in the book covers this idea of strength spotting, kind of intended for younger students who can't take the assessment. So for those of us who have worked in this area, we begin to see these things in students. And I don't think, because if I was working with students and I had a fundamental understanding and knowledge of, right, because these terms are a framework. It gives us the ability to a common language, right? But if say I don't have an assessment on a student, I can still begin to work with these students around these ideas. We begin to see these themes of competing and responsibility and activating. And some of these, as we'll talk about over the next 10 weeks, we see these things. It's okay to then start asking the students, why are you so good at that? Like, how did you feel when you did that? And so, while the assessment's important and we want people to get in there and get that taken because it gives us a framework, it gives you these reports, it gives you some resources. You can be doing these things with students today, right? Mm-hmm. Doesn't require any investment money-wise, just time-wise, getting to know these students.
I think the hallmark of this is realizing that kids are full human beings, right? And that they're different than you. And another great piece is realizing that you're going to parent or you're going to lead your kids your way based on who you are. So it's getting used to asking that question of, where did time disappear? What can you not wait to do? What do you learn without having to be taught? How can you do more of that? And knowing that for yourself and then inviting that same kind of discovery in kids.
I'd love to see a little more of those in our Facebook group for CliftonStrengths. So we have just a CliftonStrengths kind of group that's out there. And oftentimes people host their top 5 and then they say, what should I do? And I'd love to see us dialogue a little bit more there like we do with students when we begin to ask those questions of, okay, you have these 5, where did you, those, I don't even want to repeat those because you did it so well. Where are those areas when time disappears? Where are those areas when you've had great success?
Yeah.
And I think we can translate that right down to our students
Mm-hmm.
and begin to ask them those questions as well. Career discovery, we do get concerned. I do get concerned sometimes when at 12 or 16, we're trying to discover careers where the brain is not even done cooking yet. And
Yeah.
unfortunately in America, there's so much pressure to figure that out because of college that we sometimes short circuit the process of it being that discovery being done too early. In fact, I would even hesitate sometimes to put these labels on the students too early. Let them come to that realization. You might know it. Let them come to it. Like don't label them. Let them come to the label. I don't know. Respond to that a little bit, Micah.
I think it's just it's so much less about what the answer is and so much more about getting the habit of asking the question. What I was just talking about, by the way, were our 5 clues to talent, which comes in Don Clifton's book, Soar with Your Strengths. And you're right. I think let them name it themselves, but this ideally StrengthsExplorer and Strengths Spotting gives you some language to do it. Why I'm so excited about this podcast in general is I first came to Strengths working with 4th to 6th graders, and we didn't use StrengthsExplorer. We tried to use the language of CliftonStrengths in order to do some strength spotting. And I remember back to the first time that even that philosophy was brand new to me, that I didn't have to teach these children how to be excellent, but there was something already in them that was whispering to them from within that didn't have to come from me. And then I also remember really wishing I knew how to describe different kinds of talent. So part of what we're really trying to do around this exact podcast is go deep into 10 different ways to describe talent so that this is simple. You have the language to differentiate between, from kid to kid, from you and the kid. You've got that ability to say, yeah, that's exactly what I mean when I'm talking about that kid. And you've got that ability then to reflect to them, here's what's excellent about you. This may or may not change, when you grow up, but I see this in you and I think it's helping. And how do we continue that dialogue and getting used to asking those questions, helping kids pay attention to the very real fact that there are some ways of thinking and feeling and behaving that work better for them than other ways.
We have we still have 10 weeks, or no, we still have 11 weeks. Let's put it that. I can't get my weeks straight for some reason this morning. As we flush some of these out, I think what you can expect from us over the next 10 as we cover the 10 themes. As we look at each theme, we're going to come right off the book on some of the things that are available, how to think about it, how to probe in that, how to pull that out, how to encourage. I'd encourage you right now, StrengthsExplorer.com, and download all the resources. We have a bunch of resources available for you. There's a teacher guide, a parent guide. There's an example report that's out there for you. And let's not all learn it today. This 45-minute exercise is not to get everything out there today. We're going to talk about, when we have Mary on here at the end, we're going to talk about some resources coming off the book, some things that are available in the book, some of her thoughts on that. And so engage with us on this. Technically, when you think about how you're going to do this very first session will be as part of our Theme Thursday channel, just as an introduction. And then I'll be creating a completely new channel called StrengthsExplorer that will help the community get to, don't worry, you got 3 or 4 weeks to get this done. We'll be putting those out there in their own separate space as kind of a series. If you go to our YouTube channel, it'll have its own playlist. So if you just search Gallup Strength Center on YouTube, you'll see all of our series out there. We'll have our own Strengths Explorer series or playlist that'll be available for you. That way we kind of separate it out. Micah, why did we choose to kind of separate Strengths Explorer from Theme Thursday? Can you just before, because people like wondering like, hey, wait a minute, aren't these themes? And why not just keep it Theme Thursday?
You told me it would be a good idea, and I do whatever you say. Strengths Explorer, I think, deserves to live on its own. It's easier to find that way. It's easier not to expect the same sort of practice around CliftonStrengths that we have around Strengths Explorer. Short answer is it's good enough to stand by itself. And we didn't want to confuse it. We did originally talk about this being season 5 of Theme Thursday. And then there's so much we can do with adult themes because they are so much more well ingrained and they're more detailed. We can go so much further being honestly a little bit more prescriptive around what we invite people to think about. And we want you to just think about Strengths Explorer a little bit differently. What would you say, Jim?
No, same reasons. We also want to separate that from an SEO. So people are searching for that. they'll find the separate series. I also am afraid a little bit, we sometimes with the 34 themes get very particular and especially very prescriptive because they're performance based. In a lot of ways, we wanted to separate that. I think we have to be really, really cautious with students that this is more of an exploratory area. This is more learning and development. This is more them figuring things out. This is them figuring things out and failing in doing it. And that's okay. We are helping them discover these pieces. In fact, one of the themes is called Discoverer. And I think there's a lot in this where we want people just kind of think and interact and not draw conclusions.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes we do that, just to be honest, in the name it, aim it, and claim it. That begins to focus on performance. And while that's still prescriptive, we wanted to separate those two a little bit. It's just in the way we think about it. So it also gives us the ability to do a season 2 of that. And I'm not thinking about that already. We got a season 1 to get through. Micah, anything else you'd throw in as we think about wrapping this for today? And I'll encourage everyone to stay close. By the way, no separate Facebook group for this. That's a question I'm going to get asked. Are we going to create a StrengthsExplorer Facebook group? The answer is no. Just head out to the Webcast channel, facebook.com/groups/called2coach. It'll all be mixed in with that. And I think that's a great way to do it. Anything else you'd add before we wrap it?
Parenting is hard. So give yourself credit if you're listening to this as a parent who just wants to get better. Awesome. That's awesome. That's where it comes from.
Yeah. And let me say teaching is hard too. And we give some great resources here available to educators working in this age group, this late elementary, middle school, high school age of that here in the United States. And so there's some great resources. We hope to just more than just doing. Oftentimes we do these kinds of series and we think, just go and do. I want you to kind of just think with us over the next 11 weeks. Think and consider, ponder, and give us feedback. Let's together work through this piece in a way that allows us to really let the noodle cook on it for a while. Let's just really spend some time contemplating, encouraging one another, a lot of those experiences. Share those experiences. I'd love to hear some of those experiences that you've had with students on this. I think this is a great opportunity for those of you that work with students. Where have you seen these things? And so you can share those with us on our Facebook group, facebook.com/groups/called2coach. With that, we'll remind everyone to take full advantages of all the resources we have available at the Gallup Strengths Center, just gallupstrengthscenter.com. By the way, if you go to StrengthsExplorer.com, it will redirect you to the Gallup Strengths Center. That's fine. We are beginning to consolidate all our sites, and that's kind of part of the step in the process of getting that done. So if it redirects you, don't freak out. That's the right place you've landed there. But really a lot of resources put together for you, available for you. In that, StrengthsExplorer.com is the way to get to it. If you have questions or comments, we'd love to hear those from you. You can send us an email, coaching@gallup.com. You can also catch the recorded audio and video of this program, as well as all the past ones and all our resources. We just released a brand new Called to Coach section, actually, on the Coach's blog, which took all the wonderful search capabilities as far as being able to sort by date or sort by theme or sort by title. Now it's available for Called to Coach. Head out to the resources page, coaching.gallup.com. Click on webcasts, and then you can choose any of the webcasts that we have done. We'll be adding that one to this here at some point as well. If you're interested in becoming a Gallup certified strengths coach or see any of the training, 2019 is a big year of training for us here at Gallup. You can go to courses.gallup.com, and we'd love to answer any questions that you might have. If you want to stay up to date with all the webcasts, everything that's going on, it's on our Eventbrite page, gallup.eventbrite.com. You can actually follow us there and get notified every time we launch a new series or a new webcast or anything we're putting out there. It will notify you of that as well. I want to thank you for joining us. We'll do, 5 or 10 minutes of a post show. With that, we'll say goodbye, everybody. All right, Roy, you can edit from this point on.
I might do like 2 minutes of post show because I'm pretty sure I just got a call from daycare that my kid is sick.
Oh, no. Shoot. Well, part of parenting, I think when you have sick kids, you really do see the true kid. I mean, you see the true kid a lot, but when they're sick and it strips down all the barriers, you get some really good indication. I'm excited, Micah. I was super nervous this morning. Just a little inside baseball, or it's again, we made that at the retreat. We made that joke about all these American
sports. It became a thing that we only talk about American sports. I don't even talk about sports, but I still, when I do, it feels Very American.
I know.
Inside, what does that mean? Inside baseball, behind the scenes.
Behind the scenes would be,
scenes.
behind the scenes action.
Careful, if you don't know about theater, it might exclude you.
I was really super nervous this morning for this. Just, I don't know. It's really important to me we do this right. And so Ricardo's asking, what's the theme for the? We don't know. We don't actually know yet. We were hoping. Yeah, we haven't thought about fall. We will do a theme Thursday series, season 5, starting after the summit, and it will be a shortened season. It probably will not contain all 34 themes, or it might. It just may not be 34 weeks in duration. So, that's that part. We are still trying to figure out. We've gotten tons of suggestions from you guys. Micah, I must have an email a week that says, "Hey, when you do season 5, you should do."
That's awesome. Yeah. That is awesome. You can keep sending us those. We like those suggestions.
In 2019, Gallup is really going to focus on the manager. And so we will probably take Theme Thursday for the season 5 for the fall. It will probably be manager focused, just to be really transparent and very, very clear. We have a new book coming out in May called It's the Manager. There's going to be some materials coming out. There's a lot of focus on the manager this year. So I'm sure it will be manager focused. We just haven't discovered yet what that's going to be. Thanks, Trish. She said nervousness didn't show at all. It wasn't. It was more of an anxiety thing than it was. I just wanted it to go so well that I was like, oh, I hope it's a new intro. I hope I do it right.
I think you were more nervous about having to read somebody else's written intro.
Well, you wrote it like me, to be honest. You wrote it in my voice. So
well, at first I was like, I can't write this without seeing exactly written out what Jim says every day. And then I was like, wait a minute. It's in my brain. I can write this. I can do this.
Next week, thank you for doing that, by the way. Next week, we are back on track. So we're at 11 Central, noon Eastern. And then everyone who's listening live, we want you to come back and we will dive into those. Yeah, at a different time. We'll begin to dive into those themes. Micah Chris asked if they will be, he kind of charted out all of season 4. Will he be able to chart out the StrengthsExplorer themes, you think?
Probably. I haven't figured out how we're going to talk about it yet. We'll follow the book quite a bit. Kind of like when we did season 3 around strengths-based leadership, or it was taking a lot of that great information and just elaborating on it. So we'll follow strengths-based parenting a lot.
We will indeed. You should pick up the book if you don't have it already. I know it's not available in all markets, but check your market to make sure it is. Rhonda asked about the family camp. Camp was a opportunity for Gallup and Gallup employees to bring this age group, 10 to 14 age group, in with their parents. We had them take StrengthsExplorer. Two of my students do that. That was a benefit and something we did for Gallup. We don't really sell that. It's not really available as an option, although if somebody asked and would pay for it, I bet we would do it. But it was one of those perks for Gallup that was pretty fantastic for us and for our employees. Geraldine told me in the pre-show, as her and I were talking before we even hit recording, she said, and this is such a great compliment. She goes, I always looked forward to having your kids there. And so it was just a ton of fun to be able to do those. Would you say anything else on that, Micah?
We've run it for clients too. So it wasn't just Gallup Family Camp. I've been involved before where like an organization who works with Gallup would say, hey, we want to offer this to our people. Can you come run it for us? And so we'd go on site with a couple different organizations and really just be able to say, yeah, your strengths at work, and you have another job that you go to after that job, and that's being a parent. So your kids have a full-time job too. How do we all play those roles?
Do you think that's still available?
From us? Of course. Let's just say yes.
Yeah.
Let's just go with
coaching.
Yes.
Send us an email if you want to. If you're in an organization that wants to do that and pay for that, it would be coaching@gallup.com. We'll get you to the right place. You got to go pick up a sick kiddo. Oh, bummer. I'm sorry, Micah.
Do you know what's crazy is I was trying to multitask, which is never good. I saw that the school called. And I ignored it. And then I read the visual voicemail. And so I think I know which kid it is, but it could have been translated wrong on my phone. Either way, I'm going to go change my day.
That's okay. I got to go to a manager's meeting,
Kiddos.
so we got to get that
Hey,
done. Guys,
everybody, thanks for coming out, especially at a different time. This was a phenomenal chat group, as always.
No, right on. Thanks for joining us live. We'll be back next week. And with that, we'll see you next week.